Welcome to another podcast of Daily Geopolitics, where we try to decode the geopolitics of the day. In today's episode, we have with us Lt Col JS Sodhi, an Indian Army veteran, author, and a military analyst. Lt Col Sodhi is the author of book China's War Clouds, The Great Chinese Checkmate, released just last year, and focusing on the two-front threat posed to India from China and Pakistan. Sodhi says that India should prepare for a two-front war by China and Pakistan between 2035 and 2040. This would be among six wars that China could wage in the next 50 years as it seeks to replace the US as the preeminent global power. Lt Col Sodhi, welcome to Daily Geopolitics. It's a pleasure having you, sir.
Jai Hind, Dhairya. It's my honor to be on your channel. And first of all, heartiest congratulations on starting the YouTube channel and the Instagram channel. My best wishes are with you for the super success of this channel. God bless.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, I'll cut to the chase and begin by asking you the first question. In your book, you suggest that India could never trust China and that Pakistan and China are actively working against India to wage an unprecedented two-front war or a two-front invasion, if we may say that, in 10 to 15 years from now. What makes you believe that, sir?
Well, historically, if we see before 1949, for centuries before, India and China always had very cordial relations. Unlike India and Pakistan, ever since India's independence in 1947 and Pakistan's creation as a nation that year, since then, the relations between Pakistan and India have been always turbulent. But with China and India, it was not the case, but everything changed in 1949 when, at the end of the Civil War, the Chinese had a new government in place under Mao Zedong. And thereafter, a lot of friction happened between India and China, which is well recorded in the last about 7 decades. And each time that India tried to have peace with China, it looked as if peace was there, but the peace was temporarily for a few years, few decades, and thereafter something or the other would erupt, and then the thing would go back to square one. In the instant case, after the Galwan Valley clash, the relations between India and China have been very frosty. Though a lot of diplomatic talks have taken place, foreign level talks, a lot of military level talks. But the fact remains that today India should not and cannot trust China. Because if it does this time, the consequences will be very disastrous. As regards the two-front war, which I have mentioned in my book, there are many timelines which are clearly indicating this two-front war, which is to be waged jointly by China and Pakistan in 2035. I've written numerous timelines in the book, but for paucity of time, I'll not discuss each one of them. I'll just discuss 2 or 3 important timelines. Last year, on 5th February 24, the Director of National Intelligence of America, in its annual threat assessment report, clearly brought out that the way the tensions between India, China, and Pakistan are increasing with each passing day, these 3 nations are inching towards each other for a war. Last year, on 28th October, Admiral Samuel Poparo, who is the commander of the US Indo-Pacific Command based in Hawaii, said that the biggest military buildup in world's history is being done by China. And just a few days back, on 13th February, the same admiral said that China's military exercises are not mere military exercises. They are proper preparations for a war. Apart from this, there are so many timelines which I mentioned in my book, but the fact remains, such a big military buildup is definitely not for peaceful purposes. They have specific military aims. For China, the military aim number 1 is Taiwan, and military aim number 2 is India. In my book, I mentioned about 3 wars that we fought under the Chinese President Xi Jinping's tenure, because going by average Chinese male age, which is 79, Xi Jinping this year will turn 73. And he has about a decade more in power, because then old age issues will take over. It is in the next 1 decade that Xi Jinping has to wage 3 wars, which I mentioned in my book. First is the war for Taiwan in 2027. Then will be a war for Spratly Islands in 2029. And the third will be a two-front war jointly with Pakistan on India in 2035.
Sure. Sir, let's focus on the current Sino-India border situation. Both the countries have returned to a pre-2020 status quo, as we are given to understand, after the 21 October disengagement pact. The Prime Minister and Chinese President met in Kazan on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. We also had the NSA level meeting. Sir, according to you, what did China gain from this 4-year-old standoff, eventually just to return to the 2020 status quo, as you know, as has been stated by the Indian government? So, what exactly did China gain from this standoff?
I would require 3-4 minutes because it's a very good question which you have asked and it needs little time to explain. China achieved a lot to say in the beginning. Why, I would now explain. You see what happened after Xi Jinping became China's president on 14 March 2013. He realized that with the immense financial power that China is now sitting with, it is time to now realize its military aims. And few months after Xi Jinping becoming the president, there was an article published on 8th July 2013 in Win V Pu, which is a pro-government China newspaper published from Hong Kong, whose title was Six Wars That China Will Fight in the Next 50 Years. And in this article, there are 6 wars mentioned, 3 of which I just mentioned earlier for Taiwan, Spirit Islands, and a joint two-front war on India in 2035. Now, we all know that in China, any article of this nature coming has to have the approval of the highest government authorities, else it cannot be published. So this article coming few months after Xi Jinping's ascendancy to the presidentship was a big indicator of how the future is going to fan out to be. 2 months after this article was published, in September 2013, Xi Jinping went for his first foreign visit to a nation, which was to Kazakhstan, where he announced the Belt Road Initiative for the land route. And next month in October 2013, where he went to Indonesia, where he announced the Silk Maritime Route, which was the sea version of the BRI. Now, the latent aims of the BRI, including the land and the sea, were military aims, though officially it was stated as it will increase business for the world and for China too. Now, the way BRI has been becoming successful, the way China's economic clout has been increasing, and for the last 9 years, China has increased its budget as percentage of its GDP. So clearly, there were clear military aims. Now, after Xi Jinping became the president in 2013, he had a review of the Chinese military. And in 2015, he announced the first set of defense reforms for the PLA, which are known as the 2015 defense reforms. Under this, the 7 broad organizations of the PLA were re-amalgamated into 5 theater commands, which became effective on 1st February 2016. Now, on paper, they had been created, the offices had been created, but China could not move the troops within the country for these formations because it would have attracted a lot of international flack. So China waited for an opportunity. And it got an opportunity, rather it created an opportunity next year when the Doklam crisis happened, which you know was a 73-day standoff in the month of June between China, India, and Bhutan. Now, when this 73-day Doklam standoff finished, the Indian media went gaga that, it has been a success for India and China had to go back. But they didn't quite comprehend what China gained by the Doklam crisis. China went back from that small piece of land, but in those 73 days, it mass moved its formations as per the theater commands created a year earlier in 2016. So now China's PLA planning for theater commands as well as deployment of troops on ground was totally in consonance with their military objectives, which the Indian media did not pick up that time. Now, after Doklam happened, the China were well prepared from the military point of view. On 5th August 2019, India revoked Article 370 and 35A from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which resulted in Jammu and Kashmir being bifurcated into 2 union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now, on the maps released by India after 5th August 2019, they showed Aksai Chin as part of the newly created territory of Ladakh, Union Territory of Ladakh. This got the Chinese very angry. Now, on 5th August, were the articles abrogated? On 9th, 10th August, the Pakistani foreign minister, Mahmood Qureshi Khan, he flew down to China. He met the Chinese leadership. It was decided between China and Pakistan that a strong message has to be sent to India. The Chinese government told the Pakistani foreign minister, hold on for a few months, let the winter months be over, then we'll do something. So apart from making noise in international forums, Pakistan internally was aware that China would be doing something after a few months. The day the Pakistani foreign minister came back, the next day on 11th August 2019, the Indian foreign minister went to China and tried explaining to them that this abrogation is an internal matter and it no way affects our relationship between India and China. But the Chinese government did not buy anything. The Chinese government planned and waited for the winter months to be over. As the snow in the Himalayas started melting in the first week of April 2020, the PLA started ingressing into the eastern Ladakh region of India. And thereafter, the buildup happened. Thereafter, the Galwan Valley clash happened. So what China achieved was that it sent a strong message to India. But that time, China's aim was not a full-fledged war. Because like I said earlier, for them, their military aim number one is Taiwan. For a Chinese citizen, a national obsession is Taiwan. Like for a Pakistani citizen, the national obsession is Jammu and Kashmir. So for them, Taiwan is of paramount importance. So by doing the Galwan Valley clash, they had sent a strong message to India. Thereafter, they started showing that they want peace. A lot of talks happened, which you discussed earlier. But these talks are only temporary in nature from the Chinese point of view, because China also knows that they cannot fight on a two-front war. With Taiwan on the eastern front and with India on the western front, they cannot fight a two-front war. So they have brought peace with India for the next few years till their first military objective of annexing Taiwan is over. So whatever peace talks we are seeing at any level between the Indian and the Chinese government, in my view, it is only a temporary measure by China to avert a two-front war.
Sure. So we'll come to the power dynamics between India and China in a bit. But right now, you're speaking about Taiwan, which is China's primary objective. We are given to understand in 2027, when there's the 100th anniversary of the founding of the PLA and the 21st National People's Congress, where Xi Jinping will be up for a fourth term, a record fourth term. So 2027 is being seen as a very crucial year from the perspective of Taiwan, China, and will China take over Taiwan? In such a situation, what role, what response could we expect from regional powers such as India, which has a blue water navy, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and even the US under Trump administration? So what sort of response could we expect if there's a status quo change by force in Taiwan from regional powers?
When China will attack Taiwan in 2027, which is certain, and the biggest timeline which you have said, or the biggest pointer, like you rightly said, is that year PLA completes 100 years of its formation. And there can be no better symbolic signal to send to the Chinese citizens than attacking Taiwan that year. When Taiwan is attacked by China in 2027, none of the regional powers will be able to do anything. Because as on date, when we talk, China already has the world's biggest navy. And as on date, as we talk, 2 aircraft carriers, 21 nuclear submarines, and 200 warships are being constructed in China day and night in their 6 naval dockyards to be completed by 2030. So even if half of that it is completed by 2027, already with China having the world's biggest navy, we can understand and comprehend how strong the Chinese navy would become with half of this being inducted by 2027. Secondly, when China attacks Taiwan, the other littoral countries like Japan, like Philippines, are very small nations, have a small military which will not be able to tackle on the Chinese military might. Will the USA come to the aid and assistance of Taiwan? Definitely not. We have seen an example how USA has pulled off its support from Ukraine. And in an article that I have published today, I have written very clearly that this war is totally the fault of Zelensky. And I agree with President Trump, it is the fault of Zelensky, for he did not read the situation. He over relied on the American assistance and see where Ukraine is today. Russia never wanted a war. Russia's only one small request was don't join NATO. That is it. And what was so big in this request? It was nothing. It was a very small request. Coming on to this point, in the last 10 years, USA has not sent a single soldier to any of its ally nations. We have seen how it beat a hasty retreat from Afghanistan in 2021. How, despite Israel asking for manpower, it has not given manpower. In the last 10 years, America has given only money and weapons to the nations. And later on, as the war is over, it extracts manifold from them. As we are seeing the offer of Donald Trump to Ukraine of $500 billion in exchange of their rare earth minerals, airports, and ports. So as far as Taiwan is concerned, America will not send any military assistance. In fact, in October 23, there was an opinion poll carried out in Taiwan in which 58% of the Taiwanese citizens clearly said they do not expect any American help coming when they are attacked by China. Now, we come on to the question of India. Will India be able to assist Taiwan? No. Because China's attack on Taiwan in 2027 will send clear signals to India that it is on their next target. And India will be busy preparing, defending itself for the future two-front war and will not send its military to assist Taiwan. So overall, when China attacks Taiwan in 2027, it will be only Taiwan who will be left alone and will have to fend for itself.
Sure, that's a very gloom prophecy, sir. But I mean, as things are unrolling, I think we are heading towards that situation. Thank you for that response. Sir, a couple of more questions. In terms of India-China power balance, there's a lot of commentary stating how, PLA, it's a much larger force than Indian Army in terms of weapons, in terms of manpower. You have served in the Indian Army. I would just like to ask you, sir, what's the one biggest factor, one decisive advantage that the Indian Army has over the PLA, which could be a game changer in in the event of a possible conflict with China?
The biggest USP of the Indian Army are its soldiers. There are no soldiers better than the Indian Army soldiers anywhere in the world. And not that because I've been part of the Indian Army, but history has proven it that the Indian Army has never faltered in any mission given to it. But this was when the conventional wars were being fought in the three domains of land, sea, and air. The future wars will not be in these three domains only. In fact, after the success of the Gulf War, when USA led a 42-nation multi-coalition force, USA took out a new military doctrine called the Full Spectrum Operations Doctrine in 2001, which said that war will be fought in future in all the six domains: land, sea, and air, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space. China is the only country in the world which in 2014 said that their army, their military is ready to fight in all the six domains of war in any part of the world with any country. When in 2025, not even USA has given this statement that they are ready to fight in all the six domains. General M.M. Naravne, who is the 28th Chief of Army Staff of the Indian Army and who retired 3 years back, 2 years back wrote an article in the print which was published on 7th August 23, in which he has clearly written that a two-front war on India will have disastrous consequences. The fact is that China knows that its soldiers are not of that caliber as the Indian soldiers. So to offset that, it is progressing leaps and bounds in military technology. And just to take a minute to explain to your viewers what these new fronts of war mean, is that when China will attack any nation, it will not attack with land, sea, and air forces immediately. It will first jam their cyber capabilities, it will jam their communication capabilities, it will jam their satellites. And when that nation is crippled for the lack of communication, will it then send its army, navy, and air force? And by the time, major damage would have been done. Let me give a small example, please. We all know that Hamas attacked Israel on 7th October 23. But many of us do not know that when Hamas attacked Israel at 6:30, in the morning, for 20 minutes, the entire electromagnetic spectrum of the Israeli Defense Forces was jammed till 6:50 a.m. For 20 minutes, the IDF did not come to know what is happening. They couldn't communicate. The military commanders could not communicate with each other. And these 20 minutes gave that Hamas the first mover advantage. They entered 15 miles inside and we saw what all happened. And this was done by China. China fully assisted Hamas in jamming the electromagnetic spectrum. So now you imagine a modern war which China is going to fight. It will jam the electromagnetic spectrum of the defense where the military commanders will not be able to communicate. It will have a lot of cyber attacks in which your electricity grid will fail, your banking system will fail, your airport linkages will fail. It will destroy your communication satellites. And then will it launch its land, sea, and air forces. So when the nation on whom it is attacking would be in total disarray and confusion, that's the time Chinese Army, Navy, Air Force will come. And for them, the mopping operation would be very simple. So one lesson which China has learned from the Russia-Ukraine war or the Israel-Hamas war is its next wars with Taiwan and India will be very short and swift. It will not exceed 7 to 10 days.
Sure. So one last question. In order to avert a two-front war, how feasible? I mean, I'm sure our policymakers, our military chiefs, and our military leadership, they are seized of the matter. So, how plausible do you see the scenario of India making a move on POK?
You see, taking back Pakistan occupied Jammu Kashmir is good in rhetorics, but in reality, it is very difficult. There are two main reasons. In the military teaching, it is taught that when an attacker attacks a defender in plains, the ratio is 3:1. 3 of an attacker, 1 of the defender. But in mountains, the ratio becomes 9:1. And Pakistan occupied Jammu Kashmir is fully mountainous terrain. So firstly, the quantum of forces required would be very high. Secondly, if India decides to attack Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, China will definitely come to the aid and assistance of Pakistan. So two-front war will erupt that time. Thirdly, it is very important that the people of the place that you're trying to attack upon are totally pro-you. Because if the will of the people is against you, it will be very difficult to occupy that area for long. POJK people are totally anti-India. What you see on the Twitter or something is very few videos of few people. The majority are anti-India. Now, somebody would ask me that, sir, can't you draw a same comparison with Taiwan for China? Are the Taiwanese people pro-China? Most of them are not, but quite a large number are still. In fact, if we read, we find there are many Taiwanese who want a peaceful reunification with China. And China is capitalizing on that. It is pumping a lot of money in the fourth estate, in their various NGOs with the aim of weaning them away. So the will of the people is important, a pivotal factor. As of now, the odds are against India if it decides to take back POJK military.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, sir. And thank you for this crisp and a very punchy interview. And thank you for joining Daily Geopolitics for this episode, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dara, for giving me an opportunity, and all the best for your channel once again. God bless.
Thank you, sir.